If you were dying or if you died tomorrow, will the people who you love the most know exactly what you want? Most of us avoid asking these questions, but what if answering them now could actually bring a whole heap of clarity, comfort, and even some curious joy into your life, as well as giving the greatest gift to those who we love as our parting gift? In today's episode of Death on the Daily, we are diving into the end of life essentials. These are 3 things that you need to do now. And actually, I am practicing what I am preaching. So in this episode, I'm going to be sharing where I'm at with these. Some I have started, some I haven't started. I'm going to be completely open and honest and truthful, because in this death space, it's totally understandable that this can bring up a lot. And today's episode is very much inspired by my recent conversation with the Dead Good sisters, Katie and Lindsay Vigers. And they are both death educators, and they're really on a mission. They mentioned it in the podcast, actually. It's all about inspiring us to have conversations about death, but within that as well, inspiring us to lean into the practical side of things that are absolutely crucial that we sort out now, including things like our will and other end-of-life wishes. So let's dive into these 3 end-of-life essentials. But before we do, as we always flow forwards with in Death on the Daily, I want to invite you just take a moment of connection. Maybe if you wanted to just join me, put your hand to your heart, if that's comfortable for you to do and if you're able to do it. And just connect in with yourself, because these topics can bring up a lot. For me, it's definitely avoidance, resistance, because connecting into the fact that one day we will no longer be here can bring up a lot by way of fears of death itself, sadness about those who we're leaving behind. So it's a complicated space. And I always say with everything that we talk about on Death on the Daily, it's all about flowing forwards with all of that heart-centered connection to yourself. Honor yourself exactly where you are today. So first up in my end of life essentials, it's really understanding who can speak for you if at some point in your life you can't. Now, in our lifetime, at some point, we may be faced with a very challenging situation, for example, an illness, for example, after an accident, when we're actually not able to communicate our wishes. And if I think about this in my own family, I think of my 3 grandparents, my nan, my granddad who's died, and also my amama. And I really connect in from the perspective of their dementia journey. And actually, there was a point in their dementia journey where they needed someone to advocate for them. They needed someone to make those decisions for them. But more broadly speaking, actually, when we come into this space of having someone to speak for us when we can't, when we think about, for example, I think of myself, I'm 39 now, and I think, that's not relative to me right now, because actually that's something that'll happen in old age. So I don't need to think about it now. But the reality of accepting all of our impermanence is also understanding that dying and death can come at any point in life. Embracing and accepting impermanence is really rooting us into the gifts and the joys of this present moment, but also being realistic and saying, I just don't know when there might be an accident that completely comes out of the blue. So if that happens, and if I end up in hospital and unable to communicate, who is going to be trusted to speak on my behalf? And what are they going to be entrusted with saying? So this is really about understanding who is your chosen person who is going to be able to advocate for you. But it doesn't just stop there, because actually there's some legal process that needs to be put in place, because obviously we can't just have anyone wandering into a hospital and saying, this is what I think this person needs, and those actions being acted upon. So what this is really about is obviously choosing your person, really, really thinking it through. Then it's about understanding, wherever you are in the world, what legal paperwork needs to be put in place and getting that done. And then on the other side of it, it's about making sure that obviously in this whole process, you've communicated to that person that you are that trusted person, but also making sure that your needs are communicated and they're documented and they're an easy place for that person to be able to find, should that scenario ever happen at any point in your life. So let's look at the legal documentation that's required. Now, I would say this is based upon England and Wales and the government legislation for here. So obviously, wherever you are in the world, please do your own research on the process and what you need to make sure that this is in place and in force. And here it's called a lasting power of attorney. And this is where you can appoint one or more people. So they are basically going to be able to make decisions on your behalf. And these decisions can be related to health and welfare and or property and financial. There are actually two different types of documents for that. So what you need to do is effectively you go through the government process of how you register this. So it is fully legal. It is a proper process. You can't just write it down on a piece of paper and expect that that is going to be legally binding. And actually, just a note that it takes in England and Wales, it takes about 8 to 10 weeks for this to be formalized. So this is where it's really, really important that we don't leave these things until we're in that situation. Because actually, if we are unable to make a decision for ourselves, then we will be unable, obviously, to, and maybe not even have the time to be able to really go through that process. So it's really, really crucial that this isn't left until obviously our end of life. But once that's in place, and obviously you will have spoken to them before appointing them and gone through that full process together. But actually, once it's in place, it's really important as well, or as you're putting it in place even, it's really important to make sure that that person is really, really clear on what are your wishes for the end of life? What is most important for you? And to support with this, there's a process that's called advanced care planning. At least, again, that's what it's called over here where I live. And advanced care planning really is about communicating your end of life wishes. It's about from the perspective of obviously your healthcare, what do you and don't you want? From the perspective of wider care and connection, what is and isn't most important for you? From the perspective of religion, spirituality, what's most important for you to be honored in that last chapter for you, as well as anything else that you want to bring into this document. And what's really important is getting your advanced care wishes down. Get all of those plans onto paper and make sure that everybody knows where they are printed, saved, making sure that your family, those people who are appointed into your lasting power of attorney, everybody knows exactly what you want. This is where it's really important to bring in that conversation about your wishes and continued conversation, acknowledging that actually as we go through different seasons and chapters in life, we may wish to change those wishes. So it's really important that it's a continued connection and a continued conversation as and when needed. And what this really does is having those conversations and setting out those plans of what you really want is absolutely crucial, because what it means is that you're not leaving your loved ones in a devastating situation of dealing with you in, for example, at the end of your life, but without them really understanding or knowing what is most important for you. Again, with all of this, it's a wrapper of love. It's a wrapper of this being a real gift that you can leave for those who you love. And I will admit on this one, I definitely don't have a lasting power of attorney. So I'm going to be practicing what I preach, and I'm going to be getting that set up literally this year. I'm going to be taking those steps to make sure that that is in place. And you can all keep me accountable, obviously. So through Death on the Daily, I will report back with updates. I will tell you when I've done it. And I would also encourage for you, if you want to go on this journey with me, drop down in the comments. Let me know where you're at today, and then come back to this video and let me know when you've ticked all of those different things off the list, and we can celebrate together. So second up, we've got what kind of final chapter and goodbye do you want? So this is really linked into that advanced care planning, but also taking it more broadly. When it comes to your end of life and after you've gone, what do you want? What do you really, really want? What is the truest expression of you? And this might sound morbid. And when I did my training as an end of life doula, I was dreading that session where I knew we were diving into what are our wishes when we're dying and what are our wishes for our funeral. In fact, I think it was 2 different sessions that I was dreading, and I had a really big lump in my throat as we went into it. But actually what I found, and this is what I spoke about with Katie and Lindsay, the Dead Good Sisters, is that actually there's a real creative force that can be opened up through us leaning in to this sort of planning. Because We can bring our creative essence of the music that we love, the people we love, our creative expressions of ourselves. What is most important to us? Do we love nature? How do we bring nature in? There can be a beautiful, I call it a curation of the end of life that can make it so meaningful. And actually, it's really interesting listening to Katie and Lindsay's stories of their dad and how vocal he was about what he wanted in that final year that they had together, and how that really made their whole experience with him so, I think they mentioned wholesome and just so much richer. So this is your moment to create that final chapter, and after you're gone, the celebration of you in a way that feels truly you. And don't worry if you wanted to do something that maybe feels a bit more traditional. You're going, should I be really creative here? Go with what you want. Go with what your heart desires. That is the only path that you need to go down right now. And know that there are so many options and so much beauty that can be brought in that is so beautifully aligned to you. So this is really where you connect into your and all of our inevitable endings, but from a place of you, your passions, your values, your vibe, your energy, your humor, whatever it is that you want to bring into it, bring it on. So for this one, what I would say is just get writing or drawing or painting, however you want to make it into a real thing on a piece of paper. But also this can be really powerful to be done in community. If you've got any friends, if you've got any family where you can actually sit together and talk about this. Obviously, you need to communicate your wishes to those who you love and make sure that they know where they are ready for them to find after our death. But what this is really about as well is that community connection and conversation that can fuel our creativity. So are there a group of friends that you can bring together to be able to get creative and expand each other on the opportunities to plan that beautifully aligned ending? So get it all out on paper, and then just make sure that those who you love know exactly where all of these are. And a beautiful other benefit of us planning our end of life, as well as the plans for our funeral, is, as in my conversation with Tree Carr last year, and she shared so powerfully how actually in us getting clear of what's most important for us then, it can help us to understand what's most important for us now. If you're doing this activity and you're thinking, okay, if I'm in my, whether it's final days, whether it's final months, final year, what's most important to me? Who's most important to me? What experiences do I want to do? Where do I want to be? Actually, what that can shine a spotlight on is what's most important to you now that actually you're not giving enough of your energy to right now. Because if death teaches us anything, when we lean into these activities, we see this life is finite. There is no forever. There is no happily ever after, forever and evermore. Unfortunately, no matter how much we would like to, no matter how many people are trying to live forever, it's probably not going to happen. But what that teaches us is there is no time like now to prioritize that which is most important for us. And third up, we've got, what is your legacy? Now, I know legacy can feel like a very big word. And actually, it's come up on this podcast before because I think a bit like purpose. Oh, what's my purpose? What's my legacy? But for me, my legacy is just purely my ripple effect. It's just what's my imprint on the world, even just in how I show up in kindness, in love, in the little things that I do for nature each day. Every bee that I save, every snail that I help when I see that it's about to get crushed because it's in the middle of the road, to be able to safely get it onto a leaf and then onto the other side of the road. I know the little things, they truly do add up. But also in legacy, it can be, what do you want to leave behind and what do you need to have in place to make sure that what you leave is going to the people that you want to leave it to? So obviously the other side of legacy is when it comes to financials, when it comes to property, when it comes to anything else that is yours and so beloved, heirlooms, jewelry, whatever it might be. It's also what legacy is really about, is making sure that you've got the right documentation in place. And Katie and Lindsay shared so passionately, make sure you've got a will. Get that will in place. And for me as well, I will be open and honest. So on the last one, when it comes to planning for my end of life and planning for my funeral, that is all been done. I've got that all logged. But actually, when it comes to my will, I haven't done that yet. I am still sitting on it. There's something about stepping into a legal process where I've got a barrier that I need to push through. So I'm going to be completely open and honest. But again, I'm making my commitment that my will is going to be in place this year, because I want to make sure that my husband, Jordan, our future children, and all of those that we love, who we want to make sure see that benefit of our financial legacy, that they will. But then I think the other side of legacy that's really powerful is our stories. And it's something that I really truly do regret with my grandparents, that I didn't think about it until it was too late with their dementia, and with, for example, my nan who's unable to speak now, or my amama who can't hear, and it's very difficult to have a conversation with her in this way. I wish I'd have sat with them and just got more of their stories down. Also from the perspective of their recipes and other different things that are just passed down in families. But I can really hold my hands up and say that, hey, when I was a kid, it was all about watching Nickelodeon and hanging out with my cousins and my friends. And then as I got older, it was all about being busy. I want to be with my friends. I don't want to be here having an in-depth conversation with you and writing it down and really understanding that that's something so precious to pass on to, for example, my children, who will be my grandparents' great-grandchildren. So legacy might also be recording everything that you wish to. What stories do you have that you want to share? What messages would you want to make sure that your children receive at any point in life? How can you log anything and everything that could just be such a beautiful little time capsule that you leave for those who you love? So I believe that legacy is, it's not even just things that I've mentioned today. Legacy can go so much broader, understanding what it means for you. But on the practical side, legacy is very much what's the will, what's the legal documentation that is in place, making sure that that is expressed, and who you want your stuff to be passed to, that can happen. But also it's really important to note that when it comes to a will, it's also from the perspective of who would, for example, care for your children, in the devastating outcome that, for example, both parents are no longer here. There's so many important nuances that I'm just starting to unearth and go, oh, wow, this is really important on multiple levels. So there's that side of things. There's the legal documentation, but also then obviously there's the other side of things, that time capsule. What do you want to leave? And how can you start just going about capturing it, as well as perhaps the legacy that you want to receive from those who are still here while they are. So those are my 3 end-of-life essentials, and that brings us towards the completion of this episode. And as we end every episode, we end with my note to self. And today's note to self is just one line. It's really, really simple, but a really powerful reminder that I need to remind myself as I go on my journey to getting my lasting power of attorney and my will, as well as that of my husband's, all sorted this year. And my note to self is this: end-of-life planning is not just for the dying. Don't forget, it's for the living. So that brings us to completion of this episode of Death on the Daily. And as always with this podcast, with that real heartfelt encouragement to meet yourself where you are in this journey, take it step by step. If you falter at certain points and you get to those boundaries of fear and resistance, just keep gently coming back to it, step by step. Take it slow, take it gentle, and know that you will push through. You will tick off everything that you want to get done. And wherever you are in this journey, know that I'm always here. Death on the Daily is always here. So if you want more, make sure that you hit subscribe, and know that I'm sending you so much love. All of my gratitude to you for joining me for another Dead Conversation. Death on the Daily is edited by David Strutt. The music is Set Free by Katie Gray. And I am Tanya Wilkinson. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be over the moon if you can rate, review, and subscribe. It really, really helps me to get the word out there. And if you want to say hi or to hear more about my work as a coach and death doula, including how I support my clients to navigate their death on the daily, then all of the ways that you can connect with me are in the show notes. I'll be back soon with some more Dead Conversations. And in the meantime, take good care of yourself and others.
There's a cold fire, there's a crossfire, and there's something inside, and we'll never make it, and we'll never break it.